Caught up on the big stories of the week.
Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche is now serving as acting Attorney General after the president yesterday fired Pam Bondi. Her removal as the country's top prosecutor comes after criticism of her leadership at the Justice Department and its handling in particular of the Epstein files. The Wall Street Journal reports the president fired Bondi Wednesday morning while the two were in the presidential limousine on the way to the Supreme Court. Bondi told an associate Trump said to her, quote, "I think it's time." She reportedly asked if she could keep her job until the summer, but the president declined. Trump had already decided earlier in the week that he would replace her. The Journal first reported in January the president had been increasingly unhappy with Bondi for failing to successfully prosecute his perceived political enemies and over her handling of the Epstein files release. Bondi expected to officially leave the Justice Department in about a month, according to the Journal. So, Jonathan Martin, this had been sort of whispered for several weeks now.
Yeah.
President Trump didn't think that Pam Bondi had gone far enough in effectively being his right arm at the Justice Department, going after perceived political enemies. And when she did, they failed in those attempts. And also, it's interesting when he talks about her being fired over the release of the Epstein files. Perhaps he's upset that she didn't protect him well enough. The fact that his name is all over those files. So how in the end did this come to be?
I think you just nailed it. I mean, I think it's the combination of the Epstein files and the fact that it was sort of seen as, in his eyes, something that was damaging to him, that was dragging out for a period of months, that was creating a constant, relentless storm that wasn't going away, basically unlike any other story that he's faced since he came back to the presidency, Willie. And I think the other issue was very straightforward. His view of DOJ is that it is a political arm for him to exact revenge on his political foes. It's not more complicated than that. And she couldn't secure indictments on Tish James, on James Comey, and on Adam Schiff. And those were sort of the three folks he was really eager to go after and get revenge on, and she couldn't deliver indictments. Now, we know why she couldn't deliver indictments, because grand juries couldn't get it done because there was no obvious charges against any of those three individuals to deliver. But that's really it. The Epstein thing was a mess, and she couldn't get the revenge that he craved. Willie, the larger context is he's got two cabinet secretaries here at DHS and DOJ, two of the most significant posts in the federal government, and neither appointee lasted 14 months. So for all this talk about, well, Trump, too, doesn't want turnover, he doesn't want a lot sort of bad process stories, he just pushed out two of his top cabinet officials after less than 14 months in office.
And now Todd Blanche, actually his personal attorney, is the acting attorney general. If Pam Bondi didn't go far enough, despite her fealty to Donald Trump, I guess he hopes his personal lawyer will. The Wall Street Journal editorial board's writing this morning a new piece titled, "Pam Bondi Gets Trumped as Attorney General." The Journal writes this: "Is there a worse job in Washington, D.C. than Attorney General under President Trump? We can't think of many. Ms. Bondi won't go down as a great AG, but we wonder if anyone could succeed given Mr. Trump's expectations for the job. The president wants someone who will do his bidding, which is proper on policy issues. The problem is he also wants an AG who will indict his political enemies and stretch the limits of the law to serve his political goals. This is a losing proposition. Ms. Bondi's great fault is that she was never good at saying no. A good AG owes the president his best independent legal advice, even if it's something the boss doesn't want to hear. The president's use of lawfare to repay his enemies will backfire on him, as it did on Democrats in 2024. He needs an AG willing to tell him when his demands cross a legal line." And, Joe, it's not clear that Todd Blanche or some of the other names that we're talking about or hearing could be the next attorney general will do that whatsoever in terms of pushing back against Donald Trump. But again, Pam Bondi did her best to be the right arm of Donald Trump at the Justice Department. We remember the hearing that was supposed to be over the Epstein files, where she started talking about the Dow Jones crossing 50, that she had Oppo research on every Democrat asking a question. fumbled the Epstein files from the beginning. But in the end, she wasn't able to go as far on personal matters for Donald Trump as he wanted her to.
Right, and we remember it was maybe back in September of last year where the president frantically sent a direct message, what he thought was a direct message on Truth Social to Pam Bondi, when in fact it was read by the entire world, where he said, quick, hurry up, time's running out, and then suggested she start prosecuting his political enemies. And John Meacham, that would have been a great time for her to actually take a stand against Donald Trump. I've known him for a long time, and I've explained to House speakers, I've explained to incoming agency heads, I've explained to anybody who asks me. Listen, being a sycophant doesn't work. At the end, if you're a sycophant, you end up just like every other sycophant that's come in and gone out of that office. You get fired, you get humiliated, you get thrown under the bus. At some point, maybe somebody will try standing up to him and getting fired for that reason. But it seems to me, John, and this is obvious, but what America needs, what this constitutional republic needs, and in fact, what the president needs is somebody who will tell him the truth. Much better to be fired for being a truth teller than being fired by being a sycophant who can't prosecute political enemies because the court's just not going to allow her or any other attorney general to do that.
God willing, and judges and grand juries willing. I think this is a somewhat complicated moment, right? Because politics, as everybody here knows as well or better than I do, is a human matter of incentive, right? And so what is the incentive for an attorney general under President Trump? The incentive is, as it seems to be with everyone there, is that you're for really the first time in American history, and I say that advisedly, you're really working in a court, a king's court, more than an administration. So that's the first thing. Even Edmund Randolph and Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, that was a different thing, right? That was a cabinet all the way through. This is different. And so you have this attorney general who is been removed for, in a way, doing the right thing. So what's the lesson? The lesson is, don't do the right thing if you want to keep your job in this particular cabinet. Now, I agree with you, Joe. This never ends well, working for President Trump. And the way I would try to think of it, if I were in the arena, is, look, do you want to be Joe McCarthy or do you want to be Margaret Chase Smith? Do you want to be Elliot Richardson or do you want to be Robert Bork to go to the Saturday Night Massacre? Take a stand, because the stand you take that is in keeping with the law, in keeping with tradition, is going to stand you in better historical stead than following the whims of a given person. And I hope the successor takes that incentive as opposed to the let's please the king no matter what incentive.
Well, yeah, and being a sycophant obviously has done none of these cabinet members who got fired and humiliated and kicked to the curb. It's done none of them any good. David Drucker, in Pam Bondi's case, she was, as the Washington Post said, she was a sycophant from day one, giving just over-the-top, flowery praise of Donald Trump, having that performance in the Judiciary Committee that was cringeworthy even for Republican members of the House and Senate. But you go through and, yes, a lot of this had to do with Donald Trump, just based on what we've heard, being angry. I suspect also coming after the Supreme Court hearing and just a spate of federal judges ruling against him. It seems like they're 3, 4, 5 a day. on, stopping some of his zaniest ideas. That certainly may have been one of the reasons for this timing, but Pam Bondi also did other things that, offended the base. I've got the files on my desk. And then when the Epstein files are finally released, she doesn't release enough to please the MAGA base, and she releases too much for the Republican president, right? So she gets it both ways. And then finally, all of these lawfare episodes, just the most preposterous charges, so preposterous that you not only have courts stopping it, you have grand juries doing something grand juries hardly ever do, and refusing to indict. So, yeah, a lot of things were out of her hands and her control, but certainly she didn't make things easier on herself from day one.
No, she didn't. And, you could see with all of these cabinet members, maybe not all of them, but most of them, right? There's the job they're trying to do day to day in their agencies, and then they're also trying to manage the president. They're trying to manage him internally. They're trying to manage him publicly. We often talk about these hearings where cabinet officials like Bondi appeared, and it's an audience of one, right? It's all about managing the president and his ego and what he wants to hear, and that's where you get that sort of loony screed about the Dow. The Dow is above 50,000. I mean, that's great. I've got a 401k, but you're the attorney general. I don't know what that has to do with your day-to-day job. I think a couple things, Joe. First of all, if you talk to lawyers who have worked at the Department of Justice, they will tell you that old saw about, being able to indict a ham sandwich may apply to random counties and states. It does not apply in federal court. Right, so there is a much higher and more professional bar for indictments when you're going to court as a federal attorney, and that's one of the things that was always going to trip up the DOJ under Pam Bondi, and it will trip up if they insist, unless they can pull some rabbits out of hats, will trip up her successor.
And don't go anywhere. We've got a lot more.
Many Americans have been concerned to see the recent rise in gasoline prices here at home. This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. This is yet more proof that Iran can never be trusted with nuclear weapons. They will use them, and they will use them quickly.
Let's bring in Democratic Governor Mikey Sherrill of New Jersey. She served nearly a decade in the United States Navy, leading missions as a helicopter pilot, among other many things on her resume. It's great to have you back on the show, Governor.
Thanks so much for having me.
I guess first, I would like to ask about the war in Iran overall in terms of this policy. But how is it impacting affordability in your state, and what are your concerns moving forward?
Well, obviously, gas prices. We just keep seeing them go up, 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 on top of the affordability crisis that we're already facing across the country with the illegal tariff plan, et cetera. And what was striking to me about the president's remarks last night is how every single time President Trump gets involved, things get worse for the American people. So he had no discussion of why we got into this war, what we hope to achieve, or how we're going to get out of this war. And, also kind of a de minimis nod to gas prices going up, saying we should all just suffer a little bit and it'll end in 3 weeks. I think he said about 12 times he's about to end this war with really no plan to do so. It's a very dangerous situation and quite striking for a president who said he was not going to get us into these forever wars. And yet now he seems to be hell-bent on doing just that.
So geopolitically, how easy is it to make a declaration as to where this is going to go when you are dealing with an invasion of Iran?
It is really difficult to chart out exactly what the path is forward here. And I'll tell you why, given what we've seen, especially in Ukraine recently, we could decimate the Iranian Navy. We could decimate a lot of their warfighting capabilities. But what we've seen is just very low technology. just minimal technology for minimal cost with, I think, the Shahed drones and stuff that they're using. We've copied them because they're so effective, and they can produce thousands of those. And so it doesn't matter if we take out their ships and aircraft. They still have the drone capability. We haven't decimated them in the way that we would like to. And we also haven't charted out how we are going to keep them from utilizing the Strait of Hormuz to shut down oil, shipments across the world. And I have to tell you, too, another thing to just show the complete incompetence of this government is when it seems as if they did not take into account the need for the Strait of Hormuz, which I tell you, Mika, I learned about the Strait of Hormuz as a plebe at the Naval Academy with strategic choke points. So the fact that our Secretary of Defense seems to have no understanding of the strategy or what we're doing here or how it's going to impact the world is shocking to me.
And suggesting that it'll just open naturally the minute we leave, which now Iran understands what a leverage point that is. They've changed the world economy by choking that off. I'm curious, just inside the state of New Jersey, when you were running, people were worried, that we're going to lose, and then you won by a significant amount. Your agenda and how it's playing in the state of New Jersey, I cited a poll from FDU that has your approval at about 60%. That's a pretty good number, to which you quickly said, give it some time. But I'm just curious what you're hearing from the people who did come out and vote for you. Are they focused on President Trump? Are they focused on Iran, or only insofar as, man, this price at the pump, where, yes, other people do pump their gas, is unbearable for me, that these groceries at the Stop and Shop are unbearable? What are you hearing from the constituents of New Jersey?
I pledged to fight to lower costs for the people of New Jersey, to address those key things that I was hearing about day to day as I went around the state. And that was utility costs, it was grocery prices, the cost of housing. And I've done just that. I stopped my inaugural address to sign an executive order freezing rate hikes. I took on power expansion across our state so long term we could drive down utility costs. We've, in my first budget, put money back into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So at every turn, I've worked incredibly hard on those key drivers of costs for New Jerseyans. And yet at every turn, the president is raising costs, saying just recently he couldn't fund Medicare or Medicaid because he has to fund the DOD. In fact, this administration has asked for $1.5 trillion for the defense budget next year, as they cut health care, as they cut education, as we see gas prices going up, as we see, because of the tariff, continued high grocery store prices. So at every turn, the president's making things worse for people. And so the people of New Jersey are getting angry. I mean, it doesn't take much. we're ready. We're ready for the fight. But I have to say, at every turn, he is making things worse.
We'll look at the executive order the president signed yesterday seeking federal control of mail-in voting.
Oh, let me check my notes here. Yeah, that's unconstitutional, too.
It's a move two states
attempting to change rules for mail-in voting. The order requires the Department of Homeland Security to create a database of U.S. citizens who are eligible to vote, which the U.S. Postal Service then would use to send out absentee ballots. Those ballots would be mailed in envelopes with special codes only to voters approved through the DHS-managed system. Additionally, the order directs the Attorney General to, quote, prioritize the investigation and prosecution of election entities that distribute mail-in ballots to voters deemed ineligible, and directs federal government to withhold funding from states that refuse to comply. The order already facing immediate legal challenges from several states, arguing it violates the Constitution's assignment of election authority to states and Congress, and clearly not to the president. President Trump often has criticized mail-in voting as cheating. Despite little evidence of that, he also recently cast his own mail ballot for the special election in Florida. The president spoke about this new order yesterday.
The cheating on mail-in voting is legendary. It's horrible what's gone on. And it's very clearly covered, very, very clearly. So I think this will help a lot with elections. I don't know how it can be challenged. You'll probably challenge it. You may find a rogue judge. You get a lot of rogue judges, very bad people, very bad judges. But that's the only way that can be changed, and hopefully we'll win an appeal if it is. But I don't see how anybody can challenge it. I don't see how they can challenge it. And remember, it's about voter integrity.
Joe, everyone will challenge it and do so very easily because they'll slide a copy of the Constitution across the table.
Yeah, he says it with a straight face, which is extraordinary. You know, he's holding, you know, a busted straight or whatever, or flush or whatever. It's such a preposterous position. He knows it's unconstitutional, right? He knows it's unconstitutional, just like he knows that he can't change the 14th Amendment with the stroke of a pen. I mean, if presidents could do that, we would have had presidents changing the Constitution left and right. But here, it is so preposterous because he knows it's unconstitutional, and he does it anyway, and then acts shocked. And he goes, oh, judges, bad people. Like, he's going to go to the Supreme Court today, and he's going to glare at the justices that he appointed, my justices, over something that he knows is unconstitutional. And then he's going to be shocked and stunned and, oh, they're bad people. Maybe if you say they're bad people 4 times, then the justices will say, oh, no, he's mad at me and I better not follow the Constitution. It's crazy. But, you know, Caddy K, I mean, what he's doing here, whether it's trying to seize ballots in Georgia and doing all of these things he knows are wildly unconstitutional, and hoping that he'll be able to intimidate judges. That's not working right now, by the way. He's merely setting up his argument. I mean, this guy is a New York real estate guy. He's merely setting up his argument for why he wasn't able to build the biggest and greatest tower in the world or whatever. But in this case, why he's going to lose, because he's already said he knows he's going to lose. Presidents in midterm elections usually lose. The Republicans' numbers are horrible. They do horribly when he's not on the ballot. So he's setting this all up. So after he loses, he can say, look, they rigged the election. How dare the Supreme Court allow other Americans to do what Melania and I did in voting in all of our elections?
I'm still loving the idea of the Supreme Court justices there, sitting there trembling, because they're such little wilting flowers. I mean, they're sensitive souls, and if they're sitting there and the president is glowering at them, I think it could change the way they rule. I mean, I really do. I think that they would sit there. No, so I mean, it's ridiculous. It's the spectacle with Donald Trump. It's the spectacle of him showing up. That's what he wants. And I haven't, even conservatives I've spoken to have said, this is a terrible idea. You don't want the federal government involved in elections at this level, because one day, guess what? There will be Democrats in control of the White House, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and they will be the ones who will say, okay, we want to run these elections our way, especially, David, when you think that you've had the firewall between the Department of Justice and the White House has been eroded in the way that it has been. And maybe the next president will come in and put that firewall back up again, but we don't know. But when you've got the Department of Justice basically being the Trump family law firm, it feels like a little bit at the moment, you know, you get Democrats in, they may use it the same way. So even conservatives are saying to me, I like the idea of identification for voting. A lot of other countries do it. But the idea of federalizing and giving power to the federal government over state elections is a terrible idea.
He has been on course to federalize elections, to change the fundamentals of the system. At least since he began this second term, he has said, if we can change the rules, we won't lose for 90 years. He said that some months ago. This is very much a political play on his part. I think he does hope it'll lock in Republican control, and it's going to lead to some big legal battles. If you look at the number of things that he's trying to do now that are paused or stopped altogether by federal district courts, it's extraordinary, and it's setting up. I think we heard a bit yesterday, this clash between the president and what he will claim is a judiciary that's out of control and violating his wishes, and then he'll press that to his followers and try to organize them against the judiciary. That's a really scary vision of the future if this continues.
Coming up on Morning Joe, we'll dig into where Gen Z stands on the war in Iran. Our next guest, a tug of war inside Gen Z's heads surrounding The conflict in Iran. Let's bring in the director of polling at the Institute of Politics at Harvard University, MSNOW contributor John Della Volpe. His new piece on Substack is titled Permission to Oppose the War.
John, the most surprising thing about this poll is that, and the polling in general is, I would have expected younger voters to be overwhelmingly against the war. That's just not the case. I think, like most of us, and we just heard it in David Remnick, who said there is no doubt that Iran poses a threat to the region. That what we've been saying all along, there's no doubt it's positive that their military's been degraded. But on the other hand, and then there's a long list, it seems that younger Americans are feeling the same way. They're ambivalent right now about this war and trying to figure out whether they support it or not. Go into the details.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And just for the record, this is kind of outside of my Harvard polling work. We'll be back with a 52nd edition of that in a few weeks. But what this is about is that I've been conducting, my digital twin, have been conducting in-depth conversations every night since the war began. Hundreds of conversations, thousands of interviews. And what we found, Joe, was among those members of Gen Z with strong opinions, you guys are right. It's 3, almost 4 to 1 oppose the war. But what I found surprising, like you, is that we have just as many, slightly more, who are kind of in the somewhat oppose, somewhat support. I don't have enough information right now to give you a strong opinion. The reason, I think, is that it hasn't quite been personalized yet. So when we talk about these tensions, is they're holding, as you often talk about, 2 ideas at the same time. They know Iran is dangerous. They know they've killed tens of thousands of people, but they also think our response is wrong, especially when young children are killed in Iran. There's a tension of they support the troops, of course, but they fear for their lives. There's a tension of maybe I don't have all the information. I'm not following this as closely as perhaps I could or I should. So they're struggling with this. And again, I think kind of in their hearts, they kind of oppose the escalation of this, but they're looking for information to personalize it more, to feel more confident in those views.
John, one of these tensions that really jumps out is I can't afford to care. It's exhaustion, as you write here, which is my life is so expensive. I've got so much going on at home. I can't afford to care what's going on. Now, part of the tension there is the war is making their lives much more expensive. Gas is $4 a gallon. It's going to start showing up in food and in other places as well. So maybe that's where that tension unlocks.
Willie, I think for the first time in like the decades that I've been polling, we actually spoke to a young woman living in her car. She said because of the war, she cannot afford to maintain her rent. And she was actually doing our interview to earn a little money to put gas in the car that she lives in. Other people who participated in these interviews talked about riding their bike to work because they can't afford gas. And they understand the kind of